How much shock can you stand?
Hello and welcome back to LarryLand, USA. I know I've been promising a two for one. We were going to be discussing, and we will, but we were going to be discussing for Halloween Night Gallery, Rod Serling's Night Gallery, and Leonard Nimoy's In Search Of. There are a lot of episodes between the two series. I love them. They're from the 70s. Eerie music. I'll save it for the later vlog, but I wasn't going to be able to get through everything and work on stuff for Planet 8 in time to get a Halloween episode of LarryLand out. I don't even have a Halloween shirt on. I have my Larry's Leaky Tiki Lounge shirt done by my friend and yours, Jay. Thank you, Jay. Eventually, I want to have Jay on the show just to chat it up like he and I normally do over lunch or dinner. But instead, we are going to be discussing, if you look over my shoulder there, the Creature from the Black Lagoon, there's a Phantasm poster and the Sphere. I'll put up a video that I shot earlier of that part of the shelf. I've always had the poster. It came out a number of years ago at one of the Comic Cons. Could have been a WonderCon, I don't remember, but I had a couple of them. I've given a couple to Will Viharo. He gave out at Thrillville when he was doing the Thrillville show at the Parkway, and I hung on to a couple of them. That one has been framed for a while, and you can't see it now, but the Godzilla shelf above me, it was back there for the longest time. And in looking at these movies, and they're all on Amazon Prime, except for the second one. You have to rent the second one. But Phantasm 1 through 5, or 1, 3, 4, and 5 are on Amazon if you're a Prime member. So I burned through those over the weekend, and I decided to invest in this Blu-ray set that came out a couple years ago. Very cool. You see the sphere there. The sphere that came with the set doesn't have the drill, but it does have the little knives, and there's the transporting rods. And this is a nice little, it has the posters, and then each of the Blu-rays with, scenes from that particular film. Of note, there's also a very nice behind-the-scenes Blu-ray that has just a plethora of making-of stuff, footage from conventions, Don Coscarelli, Angus Scrimm, who played the tall man. Don Coscarelli is the writer, creator, director of Phantasm. And this film came out back in the late 70s. I would hang out with my older cousins. They're, 5-6 years older than I am, and they would watch creature features, Bob Wilkins, John Stanley, Pete, Maria, Gus, and Johnny. And, we would go to these live appearances. We would go to local movie theaters, go see Jaws. And, back then they were a little laxed on letting kids to go see these gruesome and horrible movies. It was John Stanley's stint on Creature Features where he was able to showcase Phantasm, and he also had Angus, the guy who plays the tall man, in some of his shorts. John Stanley would do these short films with Chuck Norris and some other folks, local actors and friends, and Angus Scrimm was on there. If I can find some of those vignettes, I'll go ahead and post them. I have a closer video that I shot of the sphere and the poster, so I'll go ahead and show that now. I'll also show the original trailer for the first Phantasm film, and then we'll get into the ins and outs of Phantasm. So enjoy.
Phantasm. Is it a nightmare? Phantasm. Is it an illusion? Phantasm. Is it an evil?
You have to take me home.
But why?
No questions. You must take me home.
Phantasm. Is it a fantasy? Phantasm. Is it alive?
There was nobody driving.
Whatever it is, if this one doesn't scare you, you're already dead. Phantasm.
About the sketch, and you know about the promotion. Now, let's discuss mini-movies for a moment. A mini-movie is a combination interview and dramatic comedy sketch. Now, it's been designed to break away from the talking head syndrome and to introduce an element of satire and entertainment. For example, one of my very first assignments on Creature Features was to cover the opening of Phantasm, a horror film that was to become very, very popular with you fans. I received this mysterious phone call one morning telling me to go to Morningside Cemetery. But when I arrived at the mausoleum, there was no one there to greet me, and I began to feel the cold touch of fear. Oh, you scared the phantasm right out of me. Hey, I know you. You're Angus Scrimm. You play the tall man in the new film Phantasm. They tell me you're very gregarious and outgoing and friendly and charming and talkative and chatty. bringing me out here to Morningside Mortuary like this? Say, who are you anyway?
I'm Don Coscarelli. I'm the writer and director of Phantasm. We just thought we'd get you in the right mood for the picture so you could take it back to your Creature Features audience and tell them all about it. Didn't we, Angus?
I wanted to entertain you in a setting in which I feel most at home. I promise you every comfort.
Well, you certainly believe in atmosphere and realistic settings. This graveyard is just like a scene out of Phantasm. Where did you get the inspiration, Don, to make such a terrifying film?
Well, as a matter of fact, I've always loved graveyards, and I've always loved horror pictures. In fact, we have a Creature Features type show down in Los Angeles that I always used to watch when I was a young boy. It used to scare the heck out of me. At any rate, I always wanted to make a horror film, and Phantasm was it.
The film is certainly unrelenting, horror after horror, like a nightmare. Would you say that it's representative of your own personal nightmares, Don?
I think it definitely does. In fact, one of the best scenes in the picture is about a little weapon that the tall man uses in his mausoleum. We call it the Silver Sphere. What it does is it flies around through the hallways, and any intruder, it seeks them out and kills them.
That's the ball that has the knife on it?
Yes, it sticks into their head, bores into their brain, and sucks all their blood out of their head.
Don, you've made 2 previous films, neither of which had a horror film theme to it. What made you decide to do a horror film on your 3rd time out as a producer-director?
Well, horror pictures have always had a good box office, and that's why I initially wanted to do a horror picture. But the great thing about a horror picture is you can get an audience to scream. And Angus and I go to the screenings now, the sneaks of it, and we stand in the back, and people jump and they scream, and we know where all the screams are, and we find ourselves jumping, and it's just great fun.
Now, some of Phantasm is very gory. Do you feel this is essential to a horror film?
Well, not necessarily essential, but it's a big part of it. I mean, people, when they come, you have to be realistic in your violence and use of violence. And, well, what we just decided to do was to use lots of gore. We use lots of blood. We use red blood, and we also use yellow blood.
Angus Scrim, how would you, in your own unforgettable words, describe Phantasm?
It's about some of the most lovable characters you'd ever want to meet. There's a lady in lavender who lures her lovers out to the cemetery and then plunges a butcher knife into them. That's very convenient for me because it saves me the trouble of going out to gather up the last remains. There's a driver of an ice cream truck who carries pieces of dead bodies in his freezing department. We call them corpsicles. Well, then there's a little demon who lives in people's hair and drills into their brains, and there's a caretaker who has his fingers chopped off that then go wandering about the countryside choking people. That's our crowd, and I'm proud to say that not one of them has ever done anything that wasn't thoroughly depraved.
Okay, John, I think you got all the information you need to take it back to your Creature Features audience and tell them about Phantasm. Driver, stop here, please.
I hope you have a most entertaining afternoon at Morningside Cemetery.
And we are back. Like I say, that trailer pretty much sums up the film. Excuse me, I have a frog in my throat today. So, Michael Baldwin played the kid Michael, not that Michael Baldwin. Bill Thornbury played Jody, and Reggie Bannister played Reggie. Now, Mike and Jody will appear in subsequent films, not in Phantasm 2, and we'll get into the reason for that. It's kind of messed up. But look, before I forget, before Freddy, before Jason, all that stuff, and Chucky, you had filmmakers like John Coscarelli, who also did The Beastmaster. He go ahead and Google him. He's done some other films, but he started off with Phantasm, and he was good friends with Sam Raimi. And there's a lot of similarities between Sam Raimi's Evil Dead and Phantasm in the production value, not necessarily the story. Phantasm has zombie midgets, and Evil Dead has the Deadites, and the evil demon curse and all that stuff. With Phantasm, it was the first film that I can think of that, there were science fiction films that had some scary moments. There were some scary films that Frankenstein created a monster from cadavers, but Phantasm, you watch the film and it's like, well, was it a nightmare? Was it a dream? Was it science fiction? Was it horror? Or was it all? I think it was all. And, when it first came out, it didn't bomb, but it didn't really... it didn't become a hit, a cult favorite, until years later. And as is evidence, the thing came out in 1979. Excuse me. The second film didn't come out till 1988. So go figure. In any case, the first movie, there's a gypsy. Spoiler alert. I don't want to say too much because I really want you guys to go and see these films. I think the more time that passes, the fewer and fewer of you will have had the opportunity to see these films. And, the problem with Netflix and Amazon Prime and Hulu and Vudu and, whatever, it's not like network television where you just Saturday night turn on, whatever. Like tonight, Jazz and I will watch Svengoolie, even though it's Mighty Joe Young. It's fun to watch, him do his spiel and his shtick. And that was the joy of Creature Features with Bob Wilkins and John Stanley. Mr. Lobo does a variation on that. Lord Bloodraw. And they have fun films that they, introduced to us. Zombu out in Reno. But anyway, this is one of my favorite movies. And like I say, I will be presenting, LarryLand will have a 2-for-1 of Leonard Nimoy, In Search Of, and Rod Serling's Night Gallery. There was a GoFundMe. I don't want to spoil surprise. There will be an unboxing of sorts. The thing is supposed to come in November. So November or December, we'll see how things work out. We'll go into Night Gallery and In Search Of. But I still wanted to do something for Halloween. So Phantasm it was. I got the DVD. There was a book. There is a book by Dustin McNeil. If you guys get a chance, Phantasm Exhumed. And it's a cool book. It has like a lot of photos from on the set, behind the scenes, locations, tells you where the locations were that were filmed, what still remain, what don't. So Mike, Jody, and Reggie, they're trying to stop the tall man. And the tall man, God, he refers to Mike as simply boy. You're not important. We're just going to call you boy. I don't care what your name is. And so when the way that he says it though is boy, it's chilly. Even when I do an impersonation, he's just such a great actor and brought such dread and they were great before CGI and stuff. What I remember my cousins Pete and Maria and Gus and Johnny talking about was a part in the film where again, spoiler alert, Mike's in an antique shop and he's looking at this old photo he comes across, and it's the tall man. And this photo, the movie takes place in the late 70s, but this photo is like from the 1940s. He's on a farm on a stagecoach and he's looking at the picture, and in the picture the tall man's just looking straight ahead, and he looks at Mike, and Mike's like, imagine looking at a picture and the thing like looking at you. So the DVD, I forgot, it retailed a couple years ago for like $99, maybe $100. If you can find it for $1.25 on the internet, maybe $135. You're paying $20-$30 over what retail was. But it is a great, great collection. The sphere itself is, it looks great. It comes with a little holder, plastic holder, so you can put it on display. We were talking about over on Planet 8 1 or 2 episodes ago. And if you guys get a chance, head on over to www.planet8podcast.com and you can hear. But that DVD set, Blu-ray set is great. The Criterion collection, we just did War of the Worlds over on Planet 8. That thing was great. At some point, I'm going to do a LarryLand on Kevin Smith. My beautiful wife got me the Mallrats Blu-ray 25th anniversary, and this is put out by Arrow Video. These guys do a really good job. I highly recommend that. The good folks at the Scream Factory. I have the Them Blu-ray. This is the Fog, John Carpenter's Fog. Actually, I have a couple of DVDs, Blu-rays from the Scream Factory. They have a lot of like behind the scenes stuff and bonus footage and whatnot. I really enjoy. But we're talking about Phantasm. So, is it a dream? Is it a nightmare? At the end of the film, Reggie tells Mike, "Well, Mike, Jody's daddy died in a car wreck, and you've been dreaming all this, stuff, and are you okay?" And I'm there for you, Mike. I can't take Jody's place, but I'm there for you. And Mike's just like, oh, God, what a trippy dream. And then the end of the movie, he's getting his stuff in the room, and he hears, "Boy," and his hands come out of the mirror and grab Mike, pull him into the mirror, into another dimension, or, hell, who knows? That's the beauty of Don Coscarelli. He really... Sam Raimi's stuff is very defined, and this is who the Deadites are. This is the Book of the Dead. This is Ash. Don leaves a lot of this up to us, and that's why I like this. It's you're going to watch it the first time and be like, what the heck? Why was there a gypsy woman there? And who's the tall man? What about Jody? And it gets more non-linear as the films progress. But out of all 5, Phantasm remains my favorite. Something like Star Wars, it's like Empire Strikes Back, Star Wars, Attack of the Clones. I don't know. I'm leaning more towards Empire, but some days it's the original Star Wars. This, hands down, it's always going to be Phantasm. I watched it a couple times to prepare for this. Once with my brother and sister-in-law. We got a outside movie screen set up. And Jazz was watching with me, and all the right, spooky moments, the boos and the blah, hit it, and it still works. Glenda had never seen it, my sister-in-law, and she, jumped at the right moment. Same with Jazz. So it's nice to see that it still has, its stuff. So almost 10 years later, 1988, Phantasm 2. Universal approaches Dawn, and they're like, "Hey, we want to do a Phantasm sequel. It's, got this cult following." And Dawn's like, "I don't know." And they're like, "Look, we've got $3 million to spend on this." And he's like, "Okay." And so he came up with a script. Now, unfortunately, the studio was involved, and they had Michael Baldwin, and they wanted Reggie out, Reggie Bannister. And Don was able to pick between the two, and he knew that Reggie was going to be the glue that kind of stuck all the films, the cohesiveness between all the films. Apparently, Don had a script for 3 already, going on in his mind. Probably a story for 4, and he wanted Reggie around. So Mike had to audition, and unfortunately, Universal didn't pick him for whatever reason. So this other kid was picked for Phantasm 2, and they introduced a love interest for him. It's an okay movie. I not my favorite in the series, but like I said, it's okay. And the ending, is classic Phantasm. Is Mike gets sucked out of a window in the back of a hearse. Boy. You think you defeated the tall man, and no. How do you defeat a phantom? how do you defeat a phantasm? How do you defeat... that's the beauty of these films. It's like, oh, God, Okay, so Phantasm 3 then comes out 1994. Didn't take 10 years for that film to come out. And that was good too. They introduced some new characters. The one lady with the nunchucks, that was cool. One of the new people who actually survive to the end of the film. She drives away, actually. Again, spoiler alert. Excuse me. And it's just a Diet Coke. It's not happy hour here in LarryLand. Before I forget, my associate and good friend Bob Johnson posted on the interwebs the Mego figure of the Fly. This bad boy is cool. So at some point, not on LarryLand, but over on Planet 8, we'll talk about the Fly films. We've already been, kind of discussing plotting out the rest of the year, so that should be some fun. Anyway, Phantasm 3. Really interesting, really good. One of the things that I like is when you look at, like, Jody is supposedly in a car wreck and dead. Mike and Reggie are going after the tall man because the tall man is harvesting cadavers and then changing them into dwarf zombies. You got to watch the movie to I'm not going to spoil that for you. To his nefarious means, because it shows another world where he's from. And we don't know if it's a planet or a dimension, but those silver rods, you walk between them and it takes you, whether it's a time warp or just space warp, again, that's the beauty of it. They'll interview Don Coscarelli and ask, well, what? And he's like, I don't know. What do you think they are? Whether that's lazy writing or just tapping into the audience's imagination. I'd like to think it's the latter. The third film, Mayhem Ensues. They bring back Jody and Mike, Mike Baldwin, Mike. And they introduce, a new sphere, a black sphere, in Phantasm 4 Oblivion. That takes place in 1998. They introduce a gold sphere. And in that one, there's actual time travel. There's an homage to Home Alone, Macaulay Culkin movie. There's this little kid that's fighting off these thugs, basically hoodlums. Anyway, it's more realistic. I think what would have happened in Home Alone if you got hit with a can of paint. I mean, it's a horror movie, so the gore is there. They kind of explain a little bit more of and when I say little, I mean a little, of the tall man. And the time travel goes back to, as like Jebediah Morningside, I think. Morningside was the last name because that's the Morningside Cemetery from the first Phantasm, where his headquarters was. So that was kind of a nice little tie back to the original film. And Mike has some dialogue with that character who is blissfully unaware of what he's going to become or what's going to ensue. The character of like Jody and Mike, they are Jody and Mike from the first film, but they grow obviously, but their characters are not. They go all over the map. Good, bad, right, wrong, up, down. And that's again part of the fun of watching the movie is trying to figure out if there is something to figure out. What's going on with these characters, who's with the tall man, who's against the tall man, who is the tall man? Because like in the first film, sometimes he's the beautiful woman in the purple velvet dress, the siren taking these men to their grave out in the graveyard. It was really kind of weird. But again, you have to interpret what's going on. The only thing we know for sure is avoid spheres when they start, the silver ball when it starts following you. On that DVD set, I didn't want to forget, there's a making of, and the spheres. There was no CGI back in the 70s, and they didn't want to tie it on fishing line, because the light would shine, and the sphere itself was hard to film because it was silver, and so they had fake panels inside the mausoleum, and it was a softball pitcher who would throw the silver ball, the sphere, and they'd edit the as it flew by. A lot of fun listening to that. They had interviews with fans, and fans from the first film who later got to work on some of the later films, because they got into the industry because of Don and his work. So that was a lot of fun. Phantasm 4 Oblivion, 1998. Phantasm Ravager, 2016. And I'll let you watch the documentary on it. It was a lot of fun, and it was very interesting that a friend of Don's was like, hey, I want to do a little short film as an homage to Phantasm. And Don was like, oh, okay, He's like, we'll do it on weekends, and I'll drive us out there, and I have a camera. And Don's like, God, this is how we did the first film. It was very reminiscent, and they were fortunate enough to get Reggie, to come in, and then let's film a little bit more, and then Mike came in, and then, they were able to fly in Jody. They're all friends, apparently. Don and the actors, and some of the makeup people, and the producers, and special effects people, and stuff. And so they went in and they filmed Phantasm Ravager, Phantasm 5. A fun movie, great ending. It takes place in this dystopian future. The Tall Man has harvested almost all the cadavers on Earth, or at least in the Northern California. And that's why I think too it would have been cool to put Ash versus the Evil Dead, the TV series. Ash wakes up in the future, and he's got this kick-ass car, and he goes out to fight, more of the dead. Throughout the Phantasm films, they had a Barracuda. They had this Cuda that they drive around in, chasing the Tall Man. They have this tricked out, like, machine gun weaponized Barracuda in the fifth film, and I'm like, oh, man, if only they had like Ash meet up with Reggie and do whatever. But who knows? Will there be a Phantasm 6? Only Don Coscarelli knows. I'd watch it, if it came out. Yeah, so that's pretty much everything I have on the Phantasm films. Again, I'm thinking back in the day, you could come up with, couple thousand, 200,000. I know his father helped him finance the film. There was no GoFundMe back there, but, you'd ask a friend of a friend, or, Kevin Smith, Clerks, he charged on his credit cards. He had 10, 15, 20, however many credit cards. And he was able to make Clerks. Don Coscarelli had his friends who were actors. Angus Scrimm was in an earlier film that he did. And, Mike and Jody and all those guys. His dad was one of the executive producers. And, he had a tagline. It's on the poster. And that's the thing. You have a great poster, right? You just got to tie those elements of the poster into the film. The great tagline, if this one doesn't scare you, you're already dead. And the music, man, I don't have it yet. I started getting into these and movies again, and I had the book, and there's this Mondo put out a record of the theme song Let me see. Do I have that? Normally I don't have notes, but there was a lot to talk about on this, and so I wanted to make sure I captured. Fred Myrow, M-Y-R-O-W, did the music for Phantasm. For the first 2 films, I think, and then some folks took over for 3, 4, and 5. Fred, unfortunately, had passed away. But Mondo came out with this album, and I can't find the soundtrack to Phantasm on eBay, on Amazon, on Apple, nowhere. Mondo came out with it like a year or 2 ago. And so anyway, much like the Blu-ray set, I paid a little more of a premium than retail, but not much. I mean, it's not like, some of the stuff you'll find on eBay for like $150 over retail, and it's like, oh. Anyway, you find the album, you're going to have fun with it. Someone has it on YouTube, all the tracks, but you have to leave the YouTube app open and listen to the music. Look, want to wish you guys a very happy and safe Halloween. It's too bad, things going on with COVID. No tricks, no treats. Be good to yourselves. Black Lives Matter. Stay ahead of the news, and not just on TV. It's very biased. If you're going to listen to the news, listen to something like BBC or print. Take a look at the newspapers, and not just one. Take a look at 2 or 3. Don't let Facebook and other online things put false stuff out there. Make sure these are real reporters, actual people that are telling you what's going on. Don't forget to vote. At the time of this recording, we got like 10 days left. Just vote. Personally, we need to get the Orange Menace out of office. But you vote your conscience. You vote, what matters to you. But just vote. Don't waste what is a fundamental right that we have here. The only way we're going to change society and the courts and the way that government is by voting. We are the people, and we need to really hold our government officials accountable. And if they don't want to be held accountable, vote them out. Okay, that's enough of that. Phantasm, lots of fun. I mean, you ever want to come over and check out the movie? I got them on Blu-ray. We could watch it out in the backyard or up in the front room with the big screen TV. You guys take care of yourselves. Happy Halloween. I promise. Night Gallery and In Search Of are coming. There's a ton of other stuff. Every other day I'm writing something on the list that we're going to be doing here on LarryLand. Don't forget to go over to Planet 8, www.planet8podcast.com. We just did the War of the Worlds. We have our Halloween episode coming out on the 30th of October. It's going to be a lot of fun. And I appreciate each and every one of you guys. Be safe. Take care of each other. Bye! Thank you for watching. We now return you to your regularly scheduled program.
Good.